Good morning, everyone. I am here today with the 2019 Volkswagen Jetta. About as base model and bare bones of a Jetta as it gets. It's about an $18,000 car. I've actually been finding them online, listed at dealers brand new for around $16,500. So pretty cheap base price. Pretty amazing pricing on these new Jettas. There's a lot to talk about with this car. There's some things that I really like, some things that I don't really like, and let's start off. Let's show you a little bit of a walk around in the daytime here. We have filmed a night video on this car, so you can see what the lighting looks like at night, the interior, everything like that. But today, we're going to go over kind of more of a comprehensive review on what this Jetta's been like to live with. I put some miles on it this week, and overall, it's pretty nice, but there are some glaring things where I feel like this car is a little bit of a step backwards for the Jetta. But at the same time, it's so cheap that you can almost forgive some of these shortcomings. Let's look back in here in the trunk, see what kind of space we have. Nice big opening, a decent amount of room back there. You've got 60/40 folding seats. Unfortunately, no spare tire back here. You do have a tire repair kit, though. I guess that saves weight and cost. I think the rear looks pretty good. This new Jetta does have a little bit more of a sleek appearance from the side profile. Eco tires with small wheels give it nice ride comfort. I do think it looks a little bit funny, though, with how massive this grille is. That is kind of my one design complaint. But otherwise, I think it looks pretty good. And this orange is kind of a sharp color too. In the back seats, set to my driving position, we have a pretty good amount of legroom. You can see it's completely barren back here. There's literally no features except for door handles and window switches and seat belts. But you do get a good amount of room. Nothing on the center console here. All the action is up front. But it's pretty comfortable. The seats are nice. I do like this cloth material. Feels very sturdy and like it'll last a long time. So that's pretty much it. Pretty basic. The engine is actually quite noiseless. There's no direct injection sounds like there used to be. It's pretty quiet. It's a pretty silent unit considering it doesn't have a plastic engine cover over it. All right, let's go over some of the interior features here. So one thing that I noticed the other night, which is kind of irritating, honestly, is that there's no manual switch or anything anywhere to adjust the brightness of the gauge cluster and just the overall interior lighting at nighttime. You have to go deep into a settings menu, and which you can't use while you're moving. And I don't even remember where it is. Personalization, lights. Oh yeah, here we go. Instrument lighting. And then you can control how bright the instrument cluster is. Kind of a mess. Everything else, though, in the infotainment seems to work quite well. You have a lot of data that you can see. Apple CarPlay is fantastic. We're going to get into that in a little bit here. Let's see here. We're going to play some music at the end of this video, show you guys the sound system. That's another one of my complaints with the Jetta. One of the worst audio systems I've heard in any new car in a really long time, which is kind of a surprise because Volkswagen usually knocks it out of the park with their audio systems. But we're going to get into that later. So, for now, though, this screen gives you a lot of nice information. You can see your fuel economy over extended periods, since refuel, since start, and that repeats a lot in here in the dash. So you can go in, you can see we have 410 miles to the tank. We've driven 108 miles since refuel, 20 miles since start, and you can have extended periods. That's really nice to have all of that data. You can even see oil temperature. It's really nice to see all that data just for daily use when you're planning your trips or calculating mileage. And speaking of which, Fuel economy, this thing is really rocking it with gas mileage. I think it's averaging about 35 miles to the gallon combined, 40 on the highway. You could probably pretty easily beat those numbers with how tall this 6-speed manual is geared. I think I've easily been averaging about 38 miles to the gallon in combined driving. This is definitely a very tall geared 6-speed, which has its pros and cons. Pretty decent reverse camera, nice and wide angle. You have blind spot monitoring in the mirrors, as well as forward collision warning, and I believe there's a rear cross traffic alert as well. So nice safety features, pretty standard on pretty much everything these days. The handbrake disengages as soon as you put it in gear and let the clutch out, which is a nice feature. And there's also an eco mode, which I haven't really gone into. This engine is pretty torqueless to begin with at low RPMs until this turbo spools up, so I haven't wanted to limit that even more. All right, guys, let's go for a drive. Put the seatbelt on here. Oh, and you do get center console, a little bit of storage there, a couple of cup holders, button to pop the trunk, and it does pop all the way up, which is kind of nice. The clutch is very, very light. It definitely reduces any effort on your part in traffic. Lots of rev hang. Now there's a reason why manufacturers do this. It's an emissions thing. It's for fuel economy, it's for emissions testing. You know, ultimately, when you're not hustling it, when you're on the daily grind, it's not that big of a deal. You kind of get used to it. As soon as you start to let the clutch out, the revs drop pretty quickly. You can probably have it tuned out, but ultimately, you're going to get this with the new Honda Civic, you're going to get this with the Jetta, you're going to get this with a lot of newer vehicles with these small turbocharged engines. The trade-off is you get great fuel economy, pretty good value in this Jetta all throughout. I'm a little bit mixed on how I feel about this car after spending some time with it, because there's some really, really good things that it has going for it. So the ride quality is fantastic. This is really gonna do well on Michigan roads or roads in the Midwest that are really poor condition, that are bumpy, that are not very pleasant to drive on. This new Jetta just absolutely rocks it on rough pavement. And as a result, it is very comfortable and easy to drive and live with on a daily basis. It also handles incredibly well, which we're going to get into, and we're going to take some turns up here, so I'll show you guys. The front end's really sharp. This car feels light. The steering is nice. It's feels very flickable and has a little bit of a smaller footprint than you would think. It's a nice sized car. It's just under 3,000 pounds. I think it's 2888 for the manual transmission, which is pretty awesome. The power level feels good once you get into those higher RPMs. You can heel toe downshift. Performance is pretty good. You do get a strange vibration from the engine area and footwell at high RPMs, which is a little bit cheap feeling. I noticed Savage Geese had the same complaint about the Jetta, and I'm noticing it in this car too with the manual. His was an automatic. This transmission is pretty typical of Volkswagen. Long throws, rubbery, but still direct. It's a nice transmission. The gearing is just super tall, and that has its advantages in that you don't really have to shift as much when driving from 0 to 50 miles an hour or so. But to get any power or to pass people or to kind of get around someone, you're going to have to downshift a few gears. And once you're in that top gear, you're going to be stuck there, and there's literally no power to do anything except for just maintain your speed and cruise. Again though, the trade-off, excellent fuel economy. Everything in here has a really light touch, light feel to it. The turn signals are light, the steering's light, the clutch is light, the brakes, the pedals, everything is just effortless and easy to use. You're not going to be building any form of muscles driving your Jetta. Pretty consistent with how Volkswagens have been for a while, and I think one of their finer attributes, honestly. There's a certain way Volkswagens and Audis all tend to kind of drive and feel, and this stays in consistency with that. I think there are a few things where this car falls short, but it is the base model, and it literally has the least amount of features possible with the Jetta. So you're going to be giving some stuff up for that reason. Very quiet. Engine's really smooth. There's not a lot of wind noise and speed. Very little cabin intrusion over bumps from the suspension and chassis. It makes it a great environment for listening to a fantastic soundtrack from your stereo. But unfortunately, the stereo is anything but fantastic. Let's go through these series of turns and then we'll listen to some music and I'll show you guys what I mean. Easy to heel and toe downshift. There's a good amount of pull above 3,000 RPM. Just the engine is a little bit. You can feel some torque vectoring there. This definitely has a good amount of grip, nice performance. I mean, there's not a lot of steering feel from these, larger, taller sidewall tires, but the chassis has really, really nice, consistent feedback, and you could have a little bit of fun with this thing on a back road. Second gear pull there for you guys. Alright, so let's talk about music. While we're at a slower speed, let's get into listening to our first song. Now, you're probably listening on your phone. You should be listening with headphones with binaural audio, but at this point in the track, you get some pretty heavy bass, which just isn't coming through the speakers. There's not a lot of range in this sound system in the Jetta. It's the midtones and the overall kind of general midtone sound quality is okay, but once you get some bass, it starts to kind of get fuzzy and just non-existent. It's almost like you're listening to a Bluetooth speaker that is just tiny and has limited range. Trebles are fine. It still gets a little bit tinny and just lo-fi in those areas. If we put on a classical track, again, there just isn't the depth and the clarity that you get from most modern car audio systems. This reminds me a little bit of my dad's 1990 Volvo 240. And if you guys know 90s Volvo sound systems pre-850, they were pretty rough. I think ultimately it's acceptable, but just barely, and I'm really not a fan of the sound system in this car, and it's kind of a disappointment because Volkswagen usually does such a great job with this stuff, and they offer, here's the thing about the Jetta is I've always thought this car is a $20,000 car that feels like a $30,000 car, or if you spec your Jetta to be $25,000, it feels like a $35,000 sedan. It really has always punched above its weight. And now it's a little bit of a shift. They've done some cost-cutting measures here that you can definitely see, but there's some other things where I wish they just gave you a little bit more in this base model. And maybe the higher trims are a vast improvement, but there's still some things here that I just wouldn't really be happy with. That said, though, if you can pick one of these up for $16,000, it's not a bad car for that. There's a lot of pros that do make this a compelling purchase. It just depends what your priorities are, what you're looking for in a vehicle. If you don't listen to a lot of music, who cares about the sound system? You can always upgrade. But, from the factory, if you're expecting a typical Volkswagen sound system that is really going to punch above its weight and price point, this definitely isn't going to be it. So, on that note, I think this Jetta is a little bit of a mixed bag. There's some things that I really, really like. I love the way it handles. I love the way it rides. The engine and transmission are pretty good. This manual is not a bad way to go. It's a little bit sluggish feeling, but as a result, it's very smooth. It's easy to drive. It's a good manual transmission to live with. And I like having control of my own gears, even though it's geared super tall. I mean, we're going 75 miles an hour right now, and it's at just over 2,000 RPM, which is going to great fuel economy. But the fuel economy on this is the same as the automatic. So would you rather have 8 speeds and the auto or the 6-speed manual? That's kind of up to you. Personally, I'd probably swing for the manual. Cruise control. This system, Volkswagen's been using this for a while. I think it's a total mess compared to what they used to have. These steering wheel mounted controls, there's so many buttons over here, and they're all relating to cruise control, and they just do different things, and I think you'd probably get used to it, but after a week living with it and using this in other cars, other Volkswagens, it's still, I need to look down and take my eyes off the road to see what I'm pressing and what's going on. Really, I wish they would fix this and make it somewhat similar to what Audi does or what they used to do with the Mark 6 era Volkswagens. Other than that, there's a lot to like here. Some things not to like, but overall, I will say that as I've driven this throughout the week, this car has grown on me more and more. And you factor in the price and how little this thing can depreciate from $16,000 new, and it has a nice warranty. It has I think it's a 6-year, 72,000 mile warranty, which is pretty good for Volkswagen. There's definitely some things to consider, and I'm not sure this is the top car in its class. There are some other options that I'd probably rather go with. But standing alone, if you want a Volkswagen, you want something with a little bit more of a European feel, this does the job, and it does some things very, very well. Alright guys, that's the review on the new Jetta. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions, any input from current owners on what your ownership experience has been like. And until then, we'll see you guys in another video later. Take care.